Is the traditional antiques and vintage trade dead? Or are we simply watching the old guard fade out while a sharper, faster generation takes its place to oversee the evolution of the business? Here's the uncomfortable reality. You can walk into a lot of sleepy provincial antique centres today and feel the silence. I've been in some recently where it feels like you've been sucked into a vacuum. Fewer dealers, fewer browsers, fewer serious buyers. And yet the irony is, at the very same time, global searches for vintage furniture, mid-century decor and antique collectibles continue to climb year on year. Social platforms are saturated with resale culture, and the second-hand economy is now worth hundreds of billions worldwide. So which is it? Collapse or transformation? Funeral or rebirth? Stagnation or evolution? Not convinced? Well, stay with me, because the truth is more brutal and more hopeful than you might think. Let's start with the ghost in the room. Traditional antique retail is struggling. That's not my opinion, that's reality. Just ask most dealers. Yes, there will be exceptions that prove the rule, but for the majority of traditional lower-end dealers, it's a familiar story. Sales are down, the cost of stock is up, and overheads are getting more and more expensive. Just check out your local high street and you'll see independent high street dealers closing at a steady rate. To the best of my knowledge, in my home city of Birmingham, population over 1 million people, there's only one antique shop I can think of. If you've got a secret list of antique shops in Birmingham, can you let me know, please? Footfall has dropped compared to pre-internet peaks, and rent, energy costs and business rates have crept into territory that makes survival feel like trench warfare. Trust me, I've been there. Auction rooms that once buzzed with competing dealers' paddles now rely heavily on online bidding, often padded by international buyers never setting foot in the building. I don't think there's any doubt that the old rhythm of the trade, browse, negotiate, build relationships over decades, has been weakened by speed, convenience, and short attention spans. Add to that a demographic shift. The generation that once fueled the golden age of antiques collecting, cash-rich, property-owning, nostalgia-driven buyers, is ageing, sadly, out of the market. Their children and grandchildren live in smaller homes, move more often, rent instead of buy, and rarely have the appetite for a 6-foot mahogany sideboard. So heavy brown antique furniture looks like it's out. But on the other side of the coin, minimalism and versatility looks like it's in. However, here comes your first reality pivot. While antiques as a traditional retail model is under pressure, the broader vintage and second-hand market is exploding. Not nudging upwards, it's exploding. The global resale economy has been growing faster than traditional retail for several consecutive years, driven by sustainability, cost of living pressures, ethical consumption, and sheer trend culture. And there's evidence that younger buyers aren't rejecting old things, they're redefining how old things are valued. They don't want museums, they want stories. They don't want formality, they want character. They don't want a dealer in a tweed jacket lecturing them. They want authenticity they can Instagram. And in my opinion, that shift matters more than any dusty shop closing its doors for the last time. Next up, let's talk money, because sentimentality doesn't pay the bills. Despite the headlines, antiques and collectibles still represent a multi-billion-pound sector in the UK alone, with exports continuing to feed global demand from American, European, and increasingly Asian markets. The good news is certain categories remain stubbornly resilient. Fine art, vintage watches, rare ceramics, design classics, militaria, and high-end decorative arts. So scarcity still commands power. Provenance still opens wallets. A rare Rolex doesn't care about TikTok trends. A verified Clarice Cliff piece does not lose sleep over fast fashion homeware. An original Bauhaus chair does not depreciate in value because IKEA launched the lookalike. What has changed is the middle ground. The mass-produced, once common antiques that relied on older buying habits rather than intrinsic desirability. That is where the soft underbelly of the trade lies. Items that once sold on tradition now struggle without relevance to the modern buyer. Here's my next thought, and it's uncomfortable. The trade isn't dying because people don't care about old objects. It's struggling because too many sellers stopped evolving, while buyers did. Today's collector is not yesterday's collector. They research, they compare, they question, they want transparency, they want authenticity backed by evidence. They want condition reports with brutal honesty, not poetic vagueness. And they want to buy at 11 p.m. from their sofa while watching Netflix. The dealers who adapted, they're thriving. The ones who refused, they're writing closing down notices as I speak to you. So, into the dreaded technology. Hero and villain in equal measure. In my opinion, online platforms have democratized the trade, not destroyed it. A small dealer in a quiet market town can now reach buyers in New York, Tokyo, London, and Berlin. Live auctions have shattered geographic limitations. Social selling has turned knowledgeable individuals into global micro brands. In this respect, the pool of potential buyers has never been larger. But there's a catch, and it's brutal. The same technology that opens doors has also flooded the market. Price transparency compresses margins. Tell me about it. Algorithms push volume over nuance. Inexperienced sellers list misidentified items alongside genuine pieces, muddying buyer confidence. And the speed of scrolling culture cheapens the perceived value of patient, considered craftsmanship. You could say that once possession was rare. Now availability is infinite, which means something really important. The dealer's real currency is no longer just stock. It's authority, storytelling, and trust. So here's the pivotal shift. The antique seller of the future is not just a merchant. They are a curator, educator, historian, and guide. Check out the Secret Chateau YouTube channel and you'll see what I mean. Those who combine knowledge with narrative can build loyal audiences. Those who treat antiques like generic inventory are sliding into irrelevance. Let's explore what I'm saying in more detail. Social behaviour has changed everything. Sustainable living isn't a fringe idea anymore. It's mainstream thinking. Fast furniture, throwaway decor, and disposable homeware are being increasingly challenged by buyers who prefer longevity and responsibility. Repair culture is back. Craftsmanship is being revalued. The younger generation are realising that an item with history carries more emotional weight than flat pack IKEA perfection can replicate. There are other manufacturers of flat pack furniture, by the way. That's not nostalgia. Personally, I think that's cultural evolution. Vintage fashion alone has seen staggering growth, with resale clothing now rivaling major high street brands in volume. And where fashion leads, interiors follow. Mid-century modern has become a global aesthetic language. Industrial chic, brutalism, and heritage revival trends are driving interest in specific design areas that were once overlooked. So antiques are no longer just collectors' obsessions. They're stylistic currency. Here's another uncomfortable statement I'm going to make. The trade won't survive on romance and old episodes of Lovejoy. Those that know. Too many dealers I know still cling to the idea that age equals value, when the market has clearly stated otherwise. In my opinion, value now comes from desirability, relevance, rarity, and story, not just the passage of time. What I mean is, something being old is not enough, but something being exceptional definitely is. And I think this is where the future of antique and vintage dealing will be won or lost. Dealers who understand shifting taste, who study design history alongside trends, who respect both tradition and modern living, will define the next chapter. Those frozen in the comfort of how it's always been done will quietly disappear. It's happening before our very eyes. Now let's take our blinkers off and zoom out even further. There's little doubt that globally the appetite for tangible assets is increasing. In uncertain economic times, people seek physical things of enduring value. Collectible markets have proven surprisingly resilient during turbulence. Art, watches, rare books and historical objects often behave differently from volatile financial instruments. Just think of the phenomenal rise in value of sports cards. It wasn't because Joe Bloggs down the road had started collecting them. It was because the big investment firms had identified them as valuable assets compared to the traditional stocks and shares they bought. That particular trend has slowed down now a bit, but who knows in the future. So these small collectibles are not just seen as decoration. They are portable history and emotional anchors, but more importantly, to those with an eye on the markets, they're seen as miniature investments. And maybe, even in today's frantic world, human beings still crave connection to something that outlasts a software update. Which brings us to the question we're really asking. Is the trade dying? Or is it demanding better standards, sharper thinking, and emotional intelligence? Because the market doesn't kill what still holds value and meaning. In my opinion, the real danger to dealers is stagnation. The refusal to speak the language of modern buyers. The fear of adaptation. The laziness of poor photography, vague descriptions, and blind pricing logic. I think the opportunity is clear for us all to see. Specialise, educate, innovate, and tell your stories with conviction. Now let's bring the mirror we're holding up to the trade a little bit closer. Imagine two futures for the same object. A Victorian writing desk, beautifully made, honest wear, subtle patina. One version sits in a dimly lit shop, priced on guesswork, waiting for a buyer who never arrives. Years pass, dust thickens, the shop closes, the desk goes to clearance, then landfill. The other version is photographed with intent, researched with care, presented with narrative. Its maker, its journey, its marks of life become part of its charm. It sells to a writer in another country who treasures it as both furniture and lineage. Same object, different fate. The variable is not the item, it's the dealer selling it and the buyer engaging with it. And I think that's where the future of our trade lies, at the intersection of technology, raw knowledge, experience and relevance. So I ask you the question again. Is the antiques and vintage trade dying? No, it isn't. But the lazy version of it is, the uncurated version is, the unadapted version is, the arrogant, stagnant, romanticised version is. What remains is leaner but more intelligent, smaller perhaps, but more intentional. We are moving from mass collecting to meaningful collecting, from ownership to relationship, from clutter to curation. And the final truth, the one that makes this trade strangely immortal, is this. As long as humans care about legacy, memory and craftsmanship, there will be a need for objects that carry time within them. Antiques are not just things, they are witnesses. Witnesses to hands that made them, lives that used them, histories that shaped them. And in a world increasingly obsessed with speed, digitalisation and impermanence, the hunger for what endures often grows stronger, not weaker. So perhaps the real question was never whether the trade is dying, but whether we are brave enough to reinvent it without betraying its soul. Because somewhere right now, a future collector is seeing their first antique, realising it has a story, wondering who held it before them, feeling that quiet, inexplicable pull towards the past. And when they choose to preserve it, to cherish it, the trade lives on. Not as a relic, not as nostalgia, but as a living bridge between time and meaning. And the truth is this: the antiques and vintage trade will never truly die. It will only ever change shape, guided by those willing to protect the past while daring to speak the language of the future. My name's Mark. Thanks for watching Antiques Central.